All right. Welcome to the session, everyone. This is our third wizard session. My counterpart, Clint Harwood, has decided this week he's going to be off in New York, so he's not going to be joining me. He's participating in a hackathon instead. So you'll get me solo today. Clint has done the first two presentations, and I'll be honest, they're going to be hard to top because, like the first one, where we talked WQL performance optimization was an incredibly insightful session. If you haven't watched that one, the recording's available and it's a good one. So I recommend checking it out. File attachments demystified happened during Rising, and I thought that was a really good session as well. So if you ever have to deal with file attachments, it gets kind of deep into the topic, and I think it's also a really valuable one as well. Let me see. Do I have? I do. Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna mess with Nick here for a second. Okay. I'm gonna switch here. Okay, so today's session, we got some stuff to talk about before we get into the presentation. Hello, Mr. Nick.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I'm
Cool.
having VPN issues, so I'm joining from my phone today. Super exciting.
Nice.
Yes.
Cool. We're gonna get to you in like just a second. As always, on our post, we have the product statement. Don't make any purchasing decisions based on anything I talk about today. Fortunately, everything I'm gonna talk about today is free. All right. IntelliJ, there was an update. It is now 3.75.3. So if you're still using IntelliJ, make sure you get that updated. We don't want you to run into any problems. All right, Nick, DevRel, what do you got?
Yeah, buddy. So, as I joked with Chris yesterday, live errors and autocomplete is out. So now is the best time to make a mistake, better than there's ever been. So, if you are looking to have an even better and more awesome experience building your Extend apps, today's the day. So go for it. If you missed it, if you're under a rock, I forgive you. Check that out. Give that feature all the love and all the feedback on the developer forum. Next up, you can find myself and Mr. CJ Johnson at Rising EMEA next month. So for those of you that will be in Barcelona, make sure to say hi. Come visit the Build PSV. Come visit our mini hack station and our Express Labs. It's going to be a great time. We'll have some developer MVPs on site too. Really, really looking forward to it. So for sure, say hi. I think it's going to be great. And then finally, we just announced that Dev Talk, our podcast, is now in its own feed. So for the longest time, we've been buried in the Workday feed. They have made the decision to give us our own show, essentially. So expect to see some familiar faces that you see on the call right now on the show very soon. I think it's going to be a great way to be educated, informed, entertained, and to have a good time. So I hope that you all give that a listen. Go ahead and subscribe, rate it 5 stars blindly, even if you don't like it, and then just give me feedback on the side. We really look forward to serving you even better. Thank you, Chris, for letting me get on the stunt for a second here.
Yeah, always good to have you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. Good
Um,
to see you,
I
buddy.
I threw a link in chat to the LinkedIn post about Dev Talk, and that'll get you straight to those conversations that you can listen to.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Cool. So if in case you missed it, huge feature drop, debugging in Orchestrate. Okay. Now I said debugging in Override, but actually debugging in orchestrations, including BP triggered, which has been a pain point, right? Like you can't test those very easily. So a lot of times folks will use like a sync orc if they have extend, and then they'll just like throw the stuff over in the BP one. But now we have this debugging feature. Super cool. Been really highly anticipating this one. If you haven't checked it out yet, take a look. It's going to make your life easier when you're working in orchestrations. Throw the link in there in chat. So check that new feature out. And what else we got here? Live errors and autocomplete. Nick mentioned it. gonna reiterate on this one. This is really cool. Now, what I noticed is one of my hopes was that it will correct, for those of us who like to live in code mode, it'll correct things like if you typo the base URL type or the delete endpoint, which has bitten many people. There are many forum posts on this where people have gotten bitten by those being wrong. And the new feature with the live errors and the autocomplete will give you a list and it will tell you what the proper names are. So it's fantastic. You can avoid that. All right, throw that into chat. And lastly, here on the new features, one more, create values, parallel processing. This just dropped over the weekend. So this is another performance enhancement with the orchestration framework that will allow the create values, if you have multiples, to be created in parallel if they can. So if there's interdependencies between them, they will be created, uh, serially, one after the other. But if they're not, they'll be done in parallel. And the net result is you're going to get faster processing in your orchestrations. So the team is continuing to make these enhancements. They're going to make things faster, make things more efficient, and orchestration is getting better and better. And it's fantastic. I say fantastic a lot today. I'm really excited about stuff. All right. That's all I had for the general housekeeping. So we'll move on to our presentation. I'm gonna try not to like get on a soapbox or anything today when I'm talking about this topic, but I have a lot of thoughts and ideas on the topic of code quality and style. So I want to talk about it for a few minutes. Only going to talk about it for a few minutes, and then we're gonna look at some new stuff that hopefully people will be as excited about as I am. So code quality, level setting here, right? Why is it important? Well, first of all, you read code more than you write code. Okay. I've read, I don't know like where these statistics come from, but I've read that on average, code is read about 10 times more than it's written. And you can imagine why, right? You're looking at code to understand how it works. You're reviewing for bugs. You're doing code reviews, hopefully. Um, and so, yeah, it's a lot of read and reread. Okay. So when we write code, we need to be writing it for readability, not writability. Okay. Hope in the future you enhance the 20-minute time limit and orchestrate. There's a big update coming on that. They announced it. It's been talked about at Rising, 48 hours. As far as timeline, we don't know when that's coming. So there will be a huge enhancement as far as the time limit goes. So stay tuned, and hopefully Workday will give some updates in the near future on when that's gonna drop. So another thing with the readability versus writability, and something maybe people don't think about a lot, is programming languages are not written for the computer. They're written for the human, right? The code you write isn't executed by the machine. It's translated and then executed by the machine, right? These languages are written so humans can understand it, so they can communicate to each other and to themselves and understand like in terms that make sense to them. Now, some languages are kind of more obscure than others, right? Some do a better job of making it human readable. But the point is, the languages themselves are written for us. And I feel like a lot of times when people write code, they're not writing it for themselves. They're thinking totally in terms of the machine. So it's another really important aspect of why readability is important to think about over writability. And when we think about writability, we mean like using, overly terse like expressions nested, multiple levels of like ternary operators. Um, there's lots of ways you can make your code that's just like, yeah, it functions, but is it readable? Is it maintainable? Am I going to really hose this up for myself in the future and not be able to understand what my intention was when I put this in place. And yes, like Nick said, be kind to future you, because the person who you're writing that code for is you in a day, a week, a month, a year, as well as your teammates or the person who comes in and takes it over after you have moved on to a new project or a new company, right? We have to think about those people. Um, Consistency in a code base can build confidence, right? So when the code looks familiar, it's easier to maintain it and it's safer to change it. Um, and so if we're consistent across our code base, across all applications, then that's a huge benefit you get. Uh, when I review code, what I want to see is code that looks the same as everybody else's code and, across my company. I don't want to be able to go into code and tell it was written by different people. I've looked at code in reviews before where I could tell it was obvious that two, three, four people touched this code because there's completely different styles and ways of doing things. When we talk about style, we don't mean like algorithmic complexity. I don't mean to say like if you have a really brilliant developer, they can make complex solutions look incredibly simple and clean. And sometimes I look at code that solves a hard problem, and I think, wow, that's so simple, right? That's different than style. That's really experience. But when we talk about style, we talk about consistency in the formatting and consistency in, how things are built, not necessarily how the algorithms work, right? Um, Consistent style is a foundation of collective ownership, right? You can't have the ability to easily onboard or pass code around if it's not consistent, right? It becomes a burden. Hmm. Bill, that's a good question. Hold that thought for about 10 minutes. So, and style isn't about ego, right? Some people are going to have preferences in terms of how they would like to write code. Sometimes you're going to have to put that, aside and compromise. Um, and, it's about like building a collaborative environment. Um, One other point on this, reducing cognitive load, right? Predictable structure means you don't have to spend time thinking about those things. You can spend the time thinking about the logic and the business problem that you have to solve. I almost hate myself for making this comparison, but years ago I read that Mark Zuckerberg always wore the same clothes every day. Like he had a closet full of gray shirts and all jeans because he didn't want to think about that. He wanted to be able to focus his mental energy on the important problems that he was trying to solve. And when we think about the code style, it's the same thing, right? I don't want to have to think about that stuff. I want to think about just solving the hard algorithms. So these are areas why, for me, making and following coding standards is important, right? That's right, Jess. All black outfits is more cool apps. I am I am living that today. Really, good code should be a conversation between developers, not a puzzle that needs to be solved, right? All right. So that's me in my little mini soapbox. Um, Now, 2 years ago, it's been over 2 years. It's crazy. Clint Harwood put together the Workday Extend Style Guide, which is a brilliant post. It's the most read post in the forum history. It's over 5,600 views, which there's only one other post that's even close to that, which is the which widget should I use? And you think about it, like it's incredible and it's very telling that the style guide has had so many views. It's a signal to me that people care about quality, right? They care about doing it in the right way. And the guide covers a ton of stuff, right? It's very broad. It's dense. There's a lot in there, right? Which is great. Because if you have a question about how something should be done, odds are it's covered in the style guide, right? Yes, the widget post has been around way longer, and I've watching it lately. The style guide views are like it seems like it's on an uptick. It's growing even faster, right? It's pretty cool. Um, there, there's a big problem with the style guide though, and the problem is it's huge, right? And that's also one of the things about that 5,600 views, right? It's probably not like a majority are not probably unique, right? There's a lot that are returning. I go back to it frequently. It's like, how was I supposed to do that again? I'm getting old. I can't remember as many things anymore. Only got so much room up here. And so there's probably a lot of folks who refer back to it, which is also good, right? It's an easy to reference thing. All right, I'm gonna switch gears for just a second. Um, right, we obviously talked about why the style guide is great. 6 months ago, um, I released the first in a new initiative, the first project, the Developers and Dragons PMD Arcanum. If you haven't read the series, I think it's fun. 6 months, over 1,000 views on the main post. It has 36 votes, which is also fun fake internet points. The most voted post on the forum, which blew my mind, right? Um, the intention here for Developers and Dragons in general is accessibility for newer developers. And also, I felt like there was a gap between where you come in and you don't know anything about Extend and you don't have any development background, and oh, my business needs me to write this app that has a bunch of complex coding, right? We're not there was nothing that was bridging in the middle there for people who needed a little help to understand like how PMD script worked in the picture. So in comes PMD Arcanum as my first big offering, um, in the Developers and Dragons umbrella, which I think has been a huge success. Now, thinking back to the style guide problem, I think to myself, wouldn't it be cool if there was a tool available that could enforce the style guide like automatically, right? I've done a ton of code reviews over the years. I used to do them as part of my job at Workday for DA. And the review itself actually doesn't take me that long, like finding the issues. Documenting the issues takes forever, right? I can spend like 5 to 10 hours on these things with like detailed line level information, right? That takes a lot of time. And then there's a turnaround. Somebody's got to go fix it, got to review it again. It's a lot of time, right, to do it right. So today I'm announcing, as part of the Developers and Dragons program, my second project, the Arcane Auditor, which, Bill, back to your question on the linter. This is a linter and it's a lot more. It does a lot. It has linting capabilities built in. It actually has a language grammar, so it speaks PMD script. It understands PMD script, so it can implement uh, rules and various things for the actual scripting, as well as implementing things that help enforce different parts of the style guide. So it is, as I like to think about it, style guide enforcer, but it covers way more than what the actual style guide covers. Okay. So I'm going to stop talking about things and I'm going to start showing you some stuff. Um, Thank you for posting the link in there to this post. If you check out this post, it's got a lot of information about the app. But I'm going to show you the app because I think that's a lot more valuable. Um, cool, Bill. Hopefully we can align on some things here. All right. right, so let's take a look at the auditor. So it has two interfaces. It's got a web interface that I think is beautiful. I'm not biased at all. Um, it probably needs to be noted that the same with the Developers and Dragons PMD Arcanum. I built this myself on my free time, so this is a personal project. Um, it has a web interface. It's got a command line interface. I'm going to show you both. Um, we're going to start walking through the basics. I'm going to talk about the different features as I go. Okay, so the point here is to be able to go through and uh, basically check our code, right? Check our apps. So at the top here on the main landing, I can choose a zip file, which is an application, or I can choose individual files. So let's say I'm iterating on a PMD page and I want to just review that PMD page. I can do that as well. And I find that really handy if you're going in and actually making corrections that the tool found. And then you can throw it back in there, run it again against just that page instead of having to analyze the entire app. And you can choose more than one file, so you can give it a handful, right? Configuration, analysis configuration. Now, there are 42 rules that come with the tool today because I don't know how to do an MVP, apparently. Um, I don't even know how I got to 42, honestly. It's a lot, and I don't remember like having built that many. It's a blur. So the configuration setup is kind of neat. So we have some that are built in. They come with the app. There's production ready and there's development. Okay. There's a team section and there's a personal section. I'll talk about those in just a minute. Um, one big PR bust. Yeah. And Nick, I took a rule out over the weekend and I had to add a new rule in just because I couldn't ship without 42. If I had like 30, 29, whatever, I wouldn't have cared. But I was like, nope, can't do it. So this allows you to select which configuration you want to use. And this allows you to have a team configuration, so the team can decide what their config is for the tool. You can also have a personal one if you're running this on your local machine. Now, the built-in ones are not update safe, so don't modify these configurations, and they're just JSON files. We'll look at those in a little bit. The important thing to know here is these ones are possibly getting updated if I update the app, right? The team folder and the personal folder are update safe. Okay, those are get ignored. I'm not going to touch any files. I'm not going to put new files in there. So if you have your own configurations that you build, you don't have to worry about them getting overwritten. The production ready file has everything enabled, all the rules. And development has some rules that are disabled. And let me show you the development one, and we can get a little idea on. Oh no, I broke my view details. Way to go, me. Okay, I'll get that'll be. Oh, it moved it down here. Well, that's interesting. All right, things to work through as I, ship an app. Um, that's fun. Okay, we'll look at that next time. So I'm gonna start with production ready, and I'll just show you. I can find. All right, let me move some things around here. So we're gonna review my REST batch sample, which is an app that I built for KSS call a while back. Yeah, live demo is great. I know exactly why I wrote that too. I will fix that today. Okay, so this is the results page. We have a couple things here. And well, before I show you this, I'm going to run with an individual as well because there's actually a difference in the output. All right, so when I share individual files, it's just going to give me a list of the files. I'll also give you the file size, which I think is really handy. We have file size limits. It's nice to know like where we're at. So these are listed here. And like I said, you can do more than one file here. I'm just going to run this one. We'll let that run. So this is what the results page looks like. Now at the top here, we see complete and evaluation. This is a context view. So files examined shows all the files that were examined in the zip, right? Did you pray to the demo gods? No, I did not. And yeah, I it's fine because I tested a bunch of the rest of the stuff. I didn't test that one thing, of course. So of course that's broken. Anyway, so evaluation files examined, so we can see from the zip what was reviewed. And we can see the configuration that was used, right? So we see it's the production ready. Okay. Now I'm gonna jump over to the other screen real quick, and it's still running. So this is quite done. This is a big file here that I'm reviewing. It's about 2,000 lines of script code. So we see here divination incomplete, partial. Okay. So the reason it's partial, I reviewed one script file. Okay. I did not include the AMD or the SMD. There are dependencies on the SMD specifically for some rules. And so it tells me the rule was not invoked. I've got this hard-coded application ID rule that's running. And only for scripts. I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you clarify? So for the hard-coded application ID rule, in order for it to validate that, it needs the application ID. It gets that from the SMD file. So what it's telling you is that rule is enabled. It was not run because you didn't provide an SMD file. Okay. Partial rule invocation. There's a PMD security domain rule that basically says, hey, you have to have a security domain set on your page. But it has some clever settings in there that will basically say, if this is a micro conclusion page, it doesn't need a security domain because that's crazy. And also, if it's an error page, which is defined in your SMD file, then it also doesn't have to have security, right? Because those error pages can't have inbounds, they can't have outbounds. Typically, they're static text with the error object, and you would want everybody to be able to access those pages. So this one is partially invoked because it went through and it checked your PMD pages, but it can't verify whether one's an error page. So if you don't have that SMD, what's the net result is going to be, oh, I know it's an error page and it said I don't have a security domain, right? If you gave it the SMD, it would identify that and that wouldn't be a finding. Okay. So there's our divination incomplete. That's what that means. So you're going to see this all the time if you're iterating through like singular pages, right? A PMD, a pod, a script. All right. I'm going to go back to the full app analysis. So it tells us up here what the zip file was that we put in. We get a total account of all the issues that were found, how many rules were enabled, and then our severity taxonomy is basically either actions or advices. And this actually follows the built on Workday program review. Those are the two categories that they use. And so I wanted to align with that. So if it's an action, it's, hey, this needs to be addressed. This could be problematic. If it's advice, you should probably, do it to align with the style guide and the coding standards, but you don't necessarily need to. Okay. So down here, we've got all the individual files that were processed with the badges that tell how many issues, action, and advice breakdown for those. And we can also up here say, okay, I only want to see my actions, or I only want to see my advices. And then we can also filter by file type, right? So if I'm like, I've got a bunch of files, I want to just look at my scripts, I can do that. File order, sort by file name, sort by issue count, depending on your preference. I think file name is probably not as useful as issue count. Point of note, whatever you select here actually gets saved cross sessions. So you don't have to reselect your file and your issue ordering every time. These two change. We don't save these. But this is going to save between sessions. Issue ordering, you can order within the singular file. We can order by the rule ID, which will group them together, which can be really handy. line number, if you want to just start at line, 1 and iterate through, or the severity, which is going to show all your action on top and all your advice is on the bottom. Okay. You can see in here that security domain rule came up, and it's going to indicate uh, what pages are excluded here. And it says, hey, this page doesn't have security domain and it needs one. That needs to be fixed. There's another rule, endpoint fail and status codes. Fail and status codes is actually really important to include in your endpoints, because if you hit a 400 or 403, those aren't treated as errors by default. And so they will fail silently. Okay. So you should always include those. That is why that is an action, right? Hard-coded Workday APIs. This might bite you. API.workday.com. The preference would be to use the API gateway endpoint variable. It is regionally aware. Again, these are things that combine like kind of industry standard linter behavior as well as extend specific best practices. And there are 42 rules that you can utilize. Okay. One other thing on this page, because I'm not a complete monster, I love dark mode, but for any of you who prefer to live in the light, there's light mode as well. I spent way too long trying to make sure that this was like friendly for folks with like visual impairments. I don't know if I nailed it, but I definitely took it, put a lot of thought into that. So hopefully, it's good for people with like color blindness. I love my dark mode though. That's where I live. Let's see. An interesting there. Okay. So let's move on from the app, because that's when download an Excel. We're going to look at the Excel. Okay, so the Excel output. Sorry if I'm a little all over the place. There's a lot to cover. Does it cover a case of PMD scripts initiating page route defined in page route in the business process configuration? Sorry, my computer's having trouble opening any Excel file lately. Let me try that again. 1 second. It likes to work the second time. Okay, does it cover the case of PMD scripts initiating page route defined in page route in the business process configuration is not a valid route? Not even sure I understand that rule. But no, there's no rule like that. And maybe we can discuss offline about the requirement there and what might fit. I will talk about custom rules too in a little bit. All right, so this is our file that we can generate as well, because as cool as the UI is, I think it's really handy to also have the files for a number of reasons. So we have the context information, the thing that we saw at the top where it was complete or partial. We have a tab for that in the Excel file. It's going to tell you what file types were included in your analysis and which ones were not. And these are basically the supported file types in the tool. Same information that we're getting from the other interface as far as the hard-coded application not being executed. And then we have a summary tab. This summarizes what files were analyzed, and it gives you just a quick breakdown. I think the Excel file, one of the things could be good for like governance processes, like, hey, prove your code like past the review, and then you can throw the file somewhere. And then of course we get a breakdown page that shows us the same data from the tool and the UI. Okay. And you'll get action, you'll get advice, line numbers. For the most part, the line numbers are accurate. That was a really hard problem, just because of all the different permutations and things I had to work through. One other thing I added here, this column, the ability to keep track as you go of what you do. So you can have a nice, easy list. It's an Excel file. Not much more to it there. All right. Let's look at the command line tool. All right. So the command line interface has a lot of the same features that are in the web interface, and a couple things that aren't. So I'm using UV, which is a Python package management tool. Does a lot more. It makes it really easy though when you're dealing with Python. It'll download Python for you. It'll download all the dependencies for the application, and it runs it all in a virtual environment, so everything's self-contained. It's not installed like system-wide. So you can keep everything in one folder. It's nice and clean. It's got all the proper dependencies, and that makes it easy to run. Okay. So I've got this UV run. It just is using UV to execute the name of the application. I should have named it Arcane Auditor, but the main file is called main.py. And then we've got some flags. I'm actually going to delete this here. Just do help. Oops, hold on a second. Let me make this just a little bigger so people can make sure everybody can see it. Okay, so we do help off main.py. It's going to tell us what some options are here. We can generate a new config. We can list the rules. We can list all the available configurations, and we can review app, which allows us to do individual files or an entire app. Okay. We'll go back here. I have a quiet flag there. So I've got this one file I want to review. I can also tell it output formats. I can say JSON. I can say Excel. I can say summary. Let me show you summary first. It should be pretty quick. It's going to give you a bunch of output. First of all, up here, interesting. If it says discovered rule, that's a rule that it's going to execute. If it says skipping disabled rule, that is turned off. Okay. Now, by default, this is using our development config when you run that. I did not specify which config to use on the command line. In development, I don't want to be nagged about my console logging. I don't want to be nagged about unused functions, things that I'm in development, with. So I have those disabled for the development config. So you can see it only ran 36 rules. The configuration allows you to turn rules on and off. And down at the bottom, since I did summary, it just gives us a quick sampling of 3 with my favorite rule, magic numbers. If you're not familiar with magic numbers, I'll talk a little bit more about those when we look at the rule doc. And then it gives you an overview of timing. Some of the stuff I added when I was developing the app, it was just useful for me. 18 issues total. Again, we can also specify output. So if we want to write it to a file, make it output to a file. I'll show you the default output just so you can see everything. All right, so if we scroll up here, now we can see the file that it analyzed. If it's an action, same information you've seen that you saw before. Advices, they're grouped together. All right, now, one other thing is the tool is meant to be CI friendly. The idea being, hey, we might want to put this as part of our version control and CI processes where we're checking code and it runs the tool against the code. So if there's no findings, you'll get an exit code 0. If it finds any actions, it'll be exit code 1. There's also a flag on the tool where it will fail on advices. So if you want to be really strict and say, if I get advices or actions, return exit code 1. And so that's all in place just for, thinking about where people may want to plug this in their own systems. All right, so that's enough on that one. There's a script in here for the web interface. That's what I'm running here. So basically just run the startup script and it will start up the service locally and then it'll open your browser for you. If people want to host this somewhere internally, you could do that too. Run it in a Docker container. Um, expose it to your organization so it's run central, however you want to run it, right? I think for most people, they're probably gonna just like start up the service and use it in the browser. I think that's probably the best user interface experience. Um, Now let's look real quick at the config file. Yeah, it's like having Chris, and yeah, I don't know if that's a selling point then, having Chris review all your apps. Some people maybe hate it. Okay, so this is what the config file looks like. So if you don't specify a rule in the config, it automatically runs it with all the default setups, right? If you do specify it, it allows you to say if it's enabled or disabled. You can do a severity override. So the complexity rule is an advice rule. But let's say I want it to be an action rule. I can override it. So your organization has the agency to look at these individually and say, I don't like that categorization of that rule. I want to set it, how it works for us. Okay. The configuration also supports for some rules, rule-specific overrides. Okay. And we see one right here. The script long block rule basically takes and looks at, say, in an on change, how many lines of scripting code do we have in here? Now, by default, it has a 30-line limit and the ability to skip comments and blank lines is off by default. So it includes comments, it includes blank lines in those calculations. They're like, no, we only care about, the actual code that shows up in there. You can disable that and say, okay, I don't want you to count blank lines and I don't want you to count comments. Now, these are like industry standard things, right? These are other linters have these. There's lots of linters out there that have kind of established, how these rules work. Nesting levels, max level of 4, right? Okay. Going to jump over from here and show off one other thing. Let's see. We go out to the rules grimoire. Okay, this is all out on GitHub, right? This is open source or open sourcery, as I'm liking to refer to it. So the tool is free. It's available under the MIT license, which really means use it however you want. If you redistribute it, just make sure that you include the license, which gives credit to me as the original author. Documentation, very heavy documentation. The rules grimoire has all the listed rules. Now, something I haven't talked about yet is the rules are broken into two categories. There are script and there are structure. Script, just like it sounds, is actually analyzing your PMD script. Okay. VAR usage, right? Everyone's favorite nag from Chris. Don't use VAR, you don't need it anywhere, right? Use let, use const. Well, this has to analyze your code in order to find that, right? So that's a script rule. This document tells you why this rule matters. Like, why is this an important rule that you should care about? It tells you what it's going to catch. It's going to give you example violations and example fixes. Now, it can only be so comprehensive, right? There's so many permutations of things that can happen that hopefully you get enough information in this document to understand how to address these problems. Okay. One other interesting one I want to talk about is a script complexity rule. This was a cool one. It uses something called a cyclomatic complexity measurement to determine if your code is too complicated. So it actually measures in the function like decision points. And I have an example here. So everything gets a score of 1 as a base, right? And every time it finds like an if statement, it adds a point, right? And if it has, or an else if, or a for loop, or logical operators like ands and ors, those are all worth a point, and it adds it all up. And if it exceeds the threshold of 10, then it's going to flag it and say, hey, this is too complicated, right? Now, the fix here is we've taken parts of that and we've extracted them out and we've refactored them into small, easy to understand functions, right? Process order is something I don't even necessarily need to like look heavily at the code. Just that abstract at the top there, like, oh, processing orders, cool. Processing premium orders, awesome. Like it makes so much more sense than this, where that's all kind of buried together and nested, right? Again, these are not things I made up. They're industry standard rules. I had to implement them, right? I had to write the code to make them work, but um, I leaned as much as I could on all the work that had been done before me with linters like ESLint and like the Rust linter and several other ones. And also as far as like counts go, like when I talk about like max lines and functions, max lines and procedural code, I looked at how other corporations do it. Airbnb has an open source style guide, which the coding standards apparently are really good, and like well respected in industry, compared to other big corporations as well, and looked, and the numbers are very similar as far as ranges go on those maxes. So that's how I decided how to implement those things. Okay. And if we look at the bottom of this page, there's a quick reference that tells you what the rule name is, category, severity if it's an advice or an action. Everything's default enabled. I've got the column in here just in case that changes in the future. And then key settings is any customizations you can do. So you can see there are some that can be customized. Um, so I showed you some examples of some of the scripts. I want to show you one example of a structural rule. This one's really funny. This one's this is a me rule. PMD section ordering. People who use visual mode are probably gonna hate this rule. I like to have my sections ordered in a very specific order, and this is another cognitive load thing, right? I want to go into the code and I don't want to search around for a section and find my security definitions at the bottom instead of the top, right? This is just another thing that adds cognitive load. I like having those things in a specific order. So I built a rule for it. It's configurable though. If your team decides they like the rule, but they don't like the order, cool, change it. Set it up in your config. This is the default list. It's also in the default configurations, so it's easy for you to go in and modify. Okay. All right, so that's all the rule stuff. I talked about the configuration stuff. Let's look at the main document with my really cool logo. This has comprehensive information about how to install it. Early feedback I'm getting from some folks is, hey, we're not all super technical like you are, and we don't live on the command line, and it's you're telling us to do some of these things that I didn't realize I needed to open a command window to do. Got it. Here you go, folks. So I'm going to add some installation scripts near future to help ease that burden. But just for folks on the call, you're going to have to do some of this for the command line, specifically like UV sync, since I'm using UV, right? What's a sudo? Yes. All right, cool. So we got the prerequisites, the table of contents here. Jump around real quick. I want to show down at the bottom here. We got some CI/CD stuff. So we talk about that. Um, context awareness, not that interesting. Custom rules guide. Custom rules stuff, right? You want to customize it. You want to build your own. It's got a rules engine. Okay. You drop the files in and they're discovered automatically and they get picked up and run and they can be added to the configuration file. So I wrote a development guide. It talks about the process if you want to build your own, um, what the classes are, what the naming structure should be, where to put the files. Got an example here you can go through. Hopefully this is a good breakdown. Um, if somebody decides they want to try their hand at it. What I will say though is like I don't expect everybody to be jumping on that. And also if you come up with a good rule idea, like let me know because it's probably more valuable to put a rule in the base app that the whole ecosystem can benefit from than to have, a custom rule. Not that I'm like, saying don't do your own custom rule for your organization, right? Maybe you hate lower camel case and you want Pascal case. Would be really easy to, take that rule that already exists that's delivered and modify it to do Pascal case instead and drop that in as a custom rule. Disable the lower camel case rule, enable the Pascal case rule. You're good, right? Again, like agency for your organization to use the tool how you want. Um, wow, we're almost out of time. Amazing. I didn't know I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get through it. Um, yeah, it's document heavy. There's documentation on all aspects of the application. Would love any feedback anyone has. That forum post that I shared earlier, anytime I make an update, at the bottom, I have a change log. I'm going to drop it in there so people just can check there. They don't have to be like out on GitHub. Um, love me some fake internet points. So if you want to star the repo, I already have 5. So I'm kind of a big deal now. I got a 5-star repo. Um, this project, like it took me a long time. I've been working on this for a lot of months, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited for people to use it though, right? I really want to see people like actually getting out there and improving their code because they were able to use the tool and see, hey, these are things that we're not, implementing from the style guide or whatnot. But I also want to be able to provide people the tool that they can use in the way that makes sense for them, right? So, all right. Um, CI/CD, open source. One thing I also want to point out here is like value proposition. I think everybody kind of gets it, but I want to kind of talk about it anyway. As a customer developer, you're probably on a team of one, and this is going to be a means for you to have that senior developer that you wish you had on your team, right? There's a lot of stuff that this will cover that you may not be thinking about. And it's hard to consume that style guide. It's overwhelming, especially if you don't know Extend really well. So for a customer developer, I think this is going to be super useful. For Workday partners, though, obviously having that consistency across your teams, code reviews take so long, right? And that's cost to you and that's cost to your customers. This is going to reduce that, right? There's a huge benefit there. If you're a built-on Workday producer, I mean, imagine the time to market is faster because you're going to be able to review the stuff and submit it to Workday for the build review, and their review is going to take less time to do it because they're not going to have as many findings. I'm talking Workday. I'm trying to align on what they do in their reviews and make sure that as many rules in this application cover that spectrum as possible so that we can assist people. And really, Workday, you're welcome because I'm gonna reduce like your workload as far as the reviews go, right? And having been a reviewer, it's like that's a relief. At a minimum, just like documenting everything, like just takes so long. So I think value proposition is definitely there for no matter where you are in the ecosystem, customer, partner, producer, right? Just use it and implement advice. Nice. We're making waves here. We're making big changes. I don't know what else is on the horizon for this. I'm kind of sitting back. If you look at GitHub, you'll notice there's actually 8 issues on there already. I'm using this as my as basically my roadmap for people. So I'm being transparent about everything. Like here's the things I'm planning. I'm gonna put them in there. I'm opening my bugs in there as I find them. I got a new one to put in there from my demo today. Um, and so just I'm treating it like a real software project, right? I mean, because it really is. So, and I mean, that's really, that's all I got to say about it. I hope people enjoyed the session. Um, my first solo one for the Wizard sessions, and Clint sets a high bar, so I had to come out swinging. If anybody wants any help, if they have help running it, if they have any questions, reach out. Like I'm always happy to answer. Um, you know, talking to the dev community. Hopefully I didn't miss too many questions. I was kind of in the zone.
There's a lot of praise. If you're going to give me the mic, I'm going to say it was a lot of praise for the recording.
Good, good. I like it. Some some uh some WQL and work questions snuck in there. So wouldn't be a knowledge sharing session without it.
Yeah, I'd love to follow up with folks online or offline asking about feature parity with the WQL enhancements in IntelliJ and App Builder. I need some more details of what they're asking, but maybe they can chat with us on the forum.
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't do anything with the WQL. I mean, because there's not really much to check on that front, but I guess if you can do anything in those files with PMD script, then I can easily add support for those cases to check against those that file type as well. But it's not there yet because that feature just came out. So, all right, well, we're at time. Thanks again, everybody, for attending. I appreciate it. I hope everybody's excited about this. As excited as I am.